Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Monday musings, this collective ascension, this collective energy video, where we have a little look at what is clearing, what is maybe being experienced right now around. Maybe you're going to be experiencing what we're going to talk about today, or maybe you're noticing it. But I do just want to say welcome. Thank you to everyone joining this video. Thank you for sharing it, for commenting, for subscribing. And thank you to all those who have registered for Wednesday's event, Getting to Know Your Team of Light. I am really looking forward to that one, to getting to know your individual teams better. If it calls to you, the link is either in the bio if you're watching this on Instagram, or in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. But let's go straight into this. I've been wanting to do this video for a little while now, and it just seems like now is the right time. You know, we're in middle of April, we're ramping up to this hybrid eclipse, this eclipse that we do not have very often at all. It's powerful, it does not happen often. And after that, we then go up into the solstice energy. And this year, in its own right, this year is where everything falls apart. It's meant to. It's meant to, so we can rebuild. And we know from the other videos that I've done, that I've shared about how to birth a new physical world, a new world in the physical, which we're physically focused. We have to bring experiences through us to alchemize. The Arcturians would say that this is the fourth density, alchemizing. You can see more of that in the star channelings. But the Arcturians would speak about this as the density, tidying up the density that we've created, the dimensions we've created. So we want to talk today about perception, family, friends, strangers. It's really interesting because we know that the world really is a reflection of us, but what does that actually mean? It means that whatever wounds, whatever shadows, whatever hurt parts of ourselves that we've had in times gone by, they form the lens through which we see everything. Yes, there may be certain threads that will activate certain lenses, but we see very clearly. We see very clearly through the lens which we have, and that is unique. No one else has a lens just like yours. And it shows up a lot as to how we see other people, whether that's friend, family member, or a friend or family member of a friend. And so let's elaborate a little bit about how this lens is formed. If we have a shadow part of ourselves to do with our feminine energy, so this usually kind of becomes imprinted from our mother or our father in his feminine energy, but usually it becomes imprinted from the matriarch, right? When we're young. And this isn't to blame, this is definitely not the point of that. The point is just to kind of understand origins. We have imprints that happen, truths that we accept as our truth instead of what they are, which is someone else's process and expression. And they become imprinted into our psyche. Now, our subconscious only knows itself. That means our inner child, our subconscious, it only knows itself. It doesn't know anyone else. If it did, that would be oneness. That's where we're going. But where we are right now, it doesn't know anyone else. And what's interesting is that's through the eyes which we see. Because the conscious mind is a translation and an expression of the subconscious, that which has been analyzed to articulation. So when we say that, it's interesting because unless we are genuinely and seriously practicing self-observation and presence, which most of us aren't. But if we were practicing that, we'd become very well versed in observing which voice within us is speaking. So let's take, for example, say we have a friend who we don't know really anything about people in their life other than what we either hear from them through the experiences they share, or through what we may perceive. Now, our perception is never going to be clear for someone that we don't actually know. And even for someone that we do know, it's always going to be our own unique perception because everyone knows everyone differently, right? No one knows anyone the same as anyone else. So if we have a wound where our feminine energy has felt like it needed to give and give and give to a point of resentment, to a point of out of balance, because the feminine nature is to receive, right? That's feminine energy is receiving. That's the balance of the masculine feminine poles. But if the feminine has been out of balance and it's been that way so long that it's invisible to us, because that's how shadows appear, it's invisible, then what we will then see in others is, and in people that we love, is perhaps we would be concerned or worried if someone is taking advantage of our friend. We might have that perception. We might have that opinion of someone. And really, that opinion might not be truly founded. It may come from, maybe you've heard someone share a process, an emotional process, when something's been challenging and they've been processing it. Or maybe it is simply from your perception. We see this actually quite a lot, don't we? When we go, oh, that person's toxic for them. That person's just toxic. It's toxic masculinity. It's this toxic femininity. This is this and this is that. It's actually really unfair of us to say, because we all have that within us. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to see it. Does that make sense? That's our lens. If we can identify toxic masculinity or toxic femininity, usually it's because we have it within us, right? Just interesting. We don't see everything that happens from an objective standpoint. We always see things through our own human gaze, through our perception, perspective from within here. It's incredibly rare that we actually zone out to see a bigger picture and to see the divine perfection of everything. But when we do, that's great, because we're seeing through the eyes of the heart. And if we see through the eyes of the heart, we can see that everyone is connected and every heart is source, which means that everyone is you, because you are identifying with source in that moment. Therefore, every being is you, showing you something. So it's an interesting video to kind of talk about, because how many times do we have an opinion about someone, or about a family member or a friend, or a family member of a friend, that actually might not be fully true? It might only be true for you or for me or for whomever, because that's our imbalance right now. That's our wound, our hurt wanting to come home. Because we also know, if you've been watching these videos a while, you'll know that anything anyone is doing is our own shadow trying to find its way back home. It's mirroring out. It's an invisible part of self. It's just interesting to kind of muse upon and ponder upon, because we make a lot of snap judgments and decisions based off overthinking something, rather than actually getting to know and seeing and feeling and being with that being enough to open ourselves up to seeing who they are truly, seeing their heart with our hearts. And if we all did this, then wow, the world would be so unified. But we know that we don't, because we separate and we identify and we categorize and we, put titles and names and, characteristics and behaviors and qualities and things like, and imperfections. We put those upon people, and that is only something the mind can do, not the heart. The heart doesn't do that. The mind does that. So it's just curious, because you might be watching this whenever you're watching this. It'll be the perfect time for you to see it whenever it is. But you might be watching this and going, that's really interesting, because maybe I found myself doing that with someone. Maybe I found myself doing that, and that's unfair, because I actually didn't get to know that person very well before making that decision, before making that judgment. Because to really embody unconditional love, to really embody this world that we're wanting to create, we kind of have to let go of those judgments. But it's hard when we've built a lifetime on the ego aspects of self. And to redefine ego is just our self, our character, our individual identity. It's whatever we identify with, right? That's our ego. The parts of us that have formed its own life from being given energy. And it's interesting, because then we have to kind of go against our ego a little bit and go, maybe I'm making a judgment about that person that's actually quite unfair. Maybe that's not true at all. Maybe that's just my shadow wanting to come home, and something in that energy field is triggering that within me. Now, if we all looked at the world that way, wow, we'd be really, really healed. really advancing through that space and time, creating what it is that we want to create. It's just something interesting to ponder upon. And I'm sure there'll be more videos that kind of extend through this. But for now, I have to go. I send you all so much love. And I wonder, have you ever experienced that? I know I have. Through the guise of concern or worry or, interest. And it's interesting, hey? So I wonder what your thoughts are. Have you experienced that? And have you felt that within yourself? I know I have before. And it's always a joy when I notice that, because then I'm like, oh, I can bring myself more healing and more love. Bye for now, and I'll see you all on Wednesday for getting to know your team right. Thank you for listening.